The freezing wind howled through the jagged peaks of the quarry. It cut right through the thin and ragged jacket Clara was wearing. She was on her hands and knees in the freezing mud. Her fingers were completely numb. They were covered in deep and twisted burn scars. She was desperately trying to gather the pieces of raw quartz that had just spilled from her woven basket. A heavy, steel-toed boot slammed down right inches from her hand. It belonged to Marcus. He was the ruthless supervisor of this illegal mining operation. He looked down at her with pure disgust in his eyes. He kicked the basket again. The remaining stones went flying down the snowy slope. He leaned in close. His breath smelled like cheap whiskey and tobacco. He told her that if she did not meet her quota by sundown, he would throw her down the steepest shaft of the mountain. Clara did not say a word. She just kept her head down. She reached out and carefully picked up a small, polished piece of quartz. It was not just a rock. It was a meticulously ground optical lens. Marcus snatched it from her scarred hand. He laughed maliciously. He called it a piece of trash and tossed it over his shoulder. It landed in the snow right at the feet of a tall stranger. The stranger was standing quietly in the shadows. He was holding a large black umbrella to shield a little girl from the snow. Marcus had no idea who that man was. He did not know that the man was Henry. Henry was a billionaire. He was the supreme head of the Swiss Royal Geological Corporation, and he was the absolute last person on earth you would ever want to make angry. Hit that subscribe button right now to bring a little warmth into your day. Make sure you do not miss this breathtaking showdown for justice. To understand why Clara endured this nightmare, you have to look past the dirt and the scars. You have to look at the crumbling wooden attic she called home. Every night, Clara would return to that freezing room. She would listen to the terrible and rattling cough of her father. Her father had worked in these very same mines for 30 years. He had inhaled toxic rock dust until his lungs were completely ruined. Now he was dying of severe lung cancer. Clara was entirely alone in the world. She had lost her mother when she was just a baby. The massive burn scar on her arm was a constant reminder of her love for her dad. A year ago, a fire had broken out in the worker barracks during a terrible winter storm. Clara had rushed straight into the burning building to drag her father out. She saved his life, but her arm was severely burned and left partially paralyzed. Because of her injury, Marcus paid her less than half of what the other workers made. He constantly mocked her disability. He forced her to take on high interest debt just to buy basic medicine for her father. But Clara had a secret gift. She had a brilliant mind for optics. Every night while her father slept, she would take the worthless quartz scraps she found in the dirt. She would sit by a small candle and carefully grind them down. She was building a high-powered telescope lens. She hoped she could sell it to a university in the city to pay for a life-saving surgery for her dad. She poured all her love and desperation into that piece of glass. If you believe that justice will always expose the bottomless greed of humanity, please drop a comment right now. Just write, I believe Mother Earth will expose all greed and reward honest sweat. Marcus knew she was building something. He did not care about the science behind it. He just knew he could probably steal it and sell it for a quick profit. He squeezed her wages tighter and tighter every week. He wanted to break her spirit completely. But fate has a strange way of intervening when things seem completely hopeless. Henry had come to this remote region in secret. His corporation was looking for a very specific type of optical quartz. He brought his young daughter with him on this survey trip. The little girl had been suffering from severe trauma. She had not spoken a single word in 2 years. She was deeply depressed and trapped in her own silent world. Henry had disguised himself as a common laborer to inspect the mines without drawing attention. He wanted to see the truth of how these remote sites were being run. And what he saw made his blood boil. Later that afternoon, the sky turned a dark and bruised purple. The temperature dropped drastically. A massive blizzard swept over the mountain in a matter of minutes. The warning sirens blared through the camp. A terrifying crack echoed through the valley. One of the upper mine shafts had collapsed under the weight of a sudden avalanche. Panic erupted instantly. Marcus was the first one to run. He jumped into his heavily armored truck and sped down the mountain. He left all of his workers behind. In the chaos, Henry was separated from his daughter. The snow was blowing so hard you could not see your own hand in front of your face. The little girl was wandering blindly near the edge of the collapsed slope. The ground beneath her small boots was giving way. Henry was screaming her name, but the wind swallowed his voice. Just as the snow beneath the girl crumbled, someone dove through the freezing air. It was Clara. With her scarred and weakened arm, she grabbed the coat of the little girl. She pulled her back from the deadly drop just in time. Clara did not wait around for the storm to clear. She shielded the shivering child with her own body. She carried her all the way up the treacherous path to her small attic. When Henry finally tracked the footprints through the snow, he looked through the crack in the attic door. He expected to see his daughter crying in terror. Instead, he saw a miracle. Clara had wrapped the little girl in her only warm blanket. She had made a hot bowl of soup and fed it to her slowly. To calm the terrified child, Clara had taken out a small wooden flute. She began to play a soft and beautiful melody. It was a song her father used to play before his lungs failed. The music filled the cold room with an incredible warmth. Henry watched in absolute stun. For the first time in 2 years, his daughter was smiling. The little girl reached out and gently touched the terrible scar on the arm of Clara. She was not afraid of it at all. Clara smiled back with tears pooling in her tired eyes. Henry stood outside in the freezing cold. His heart was breaking and healing at the exact same time. Henry did not knock on the door immediately. He stood outside in the freezing wind for a few more minutes. The violent storm was raging around him, but he barely felt the cold. He pulled a small, encrypted communication device from his heavy coat. He took several pictures through the cracked and dirty window. He carefully documented the terrible living conditions of this illegal camp. He recorded the severe burn scars on the arm of Clara. He gathered all the undeniable evidence he needed to destroy the greedy men running this operation. Then he finally knocked on the thin wooden door. Clara opened it cautiously. She saw a freezing man in a cheap worker jacket standing in the snow. She immediately pulled him inside and brought him close to the warm fire. Henry fell to his knees on the wooden floor and hugged his daughter tight. He cried quietly into her shoulder. He thanked Clara over and over again for saving his entire world. But as he sat by the fire, his sharp eyes caught something extraordinary on the small table. It was the quartz lens Clara had been working on. Henry was the supreme head of a global optical corporation. He knew scientific perfection when he saw it. He picked up the lens with trembling hands. He looked closely at the precise angles and the flawless curve of the glass. He could not believe this was ground by hand in a freezing and dirty attic. Clara looked down at the floor and apologized softly. She told him she was not stealing company property. She explained she just needed to sell her invention to pay for the lung surgery of her sick father. Henry looked at her scarred hands and felt a deep wave of respect and anger. Clara had risked her own life to save a stranger while struggling to save her father. Meanwhile, the men in charge were treating her like garbage. If you are moved by the brave and devoted heart of Clara, please take a moment to comment. Write the words, "I believe Mother Earth will expose all bottomless greed and rightfully reward honest sweat." The next morning, the brutal winter storm finally broke. The bright morning sun hit the fresh snow, but the quiet peace did not last long at all. A loud and aggressive roar echoed up the side of the mountain. It was a heavy industrial bulldozer. Marcus had returned to the camp. He did not come back to see if his workers had survived the freezing night. He came back because he realized he had left the valuable quartz lens behind. He kicked the door of the attic so hard, it completely shattered off the hinges. Clara immediately stood in front of her sick father to protect him. Marcus walked in with two large and dangerous thugs right behind him. He sneered at Clara and shoved her hard against the cold wall. He grabbed the finished lens and the notebook filled with her complex optical designs. He laughed maliciously right in her face. He told her she was just a crippled rat and these brilliant designs belonged to him now. He ordered his thugs to start the bulldozer and flatten the attic to the ground. He wanted to destroy all the evidence of his theft. He fully intended to leave Clara and her dying father out in the freezing snow. But Marcus did not notice the tall man stepping out from the dark shadows of the corner. Henry stood up straight. He was no longer hiding his authority or his anger. He looked Marcus dead in the eye with a terrifying calmness. Marcus pointed a thick finger at Henry. He told the stranger to get lost before he got buried under the wood too. Henry did not argue with the arrogant coward. He just pulled out his satellite phone and pressed a single red button. Less than 2 minutes later, the ground beneath their feet began to violently shake. It was not another mountain avalanche. It was the deafening roar of 4 heavy transport helicopters rising over the mountain ridge. They were painted in the sleek black and gold colors of the Swiss Royal Geological Corporation. Heavily armed port police and supreme corporate security teams dropped from the ropes. They completely swarmed the entire camp in a matter of seconds. The hired thugs dropped their weapons instantly and raised their hands in pure terror. Marcus dropped the lens in absolute shock. His face turned completely white. He suddenly realized the man standing in the dirty attic was not a common laborer. Henry stepped forward and picked up the precious lens from the floor. He officially introduced himself as the supreme chairman of the corporation. He informed Marcus that his illegal mining operation was completely shut down as of this exact second. Marcus fell to his knees in the dirty snow and started begging for mercy. He cried and pleaded like a complete coward, but Henry just looked down at him with absolute disgust. He ordered the police to arrest Marcus for major fraud, illegal exploitation, and the severe abuse of a minor. The cold steel of the heavy handcuffs clicked loudly around the wrists of Marcus. Mother Earth always delivers sweet fruits and blessings to those who are diligent and righteous. Please drop a comment right now to celebrate this incredible victory. Just right, I believe Mother Earth will expose all bottomless greed and rightfully reward honest sweat. The long and freezing nightmare was finally over. Marcus was sentenced to life in a maximum security prison. He lost absolutely everything and was publicly disgraced in front of the entire world. As for Clara, her life changed in ways she never could have imagined. Henry ordered a private medical helicopter to airlift her father to the absolute finest hospital in Geneva. Within a few short months, his lungs began to heal, and he could finally breathe easily again. Henry officially recognized the absolute genius of Clara. He did not just buy her brilliant design, he promoted her to the supreme director of optical design for his royal corporation. A year later, the cold and bitter snow was just a distant memory. Clara walked gracefully down the grand staircase of a beautiful and massive estate. The halls were warmly lit by hundreds of glowing quartz lanterns. She held the strong hand of Henry, and skipping happily beside them was the little girl. She was no longer trapped in her silent depression. She was laughing brightly and calling Clara her mother. Every rough grain of sand must go through harsh grinding and burning to become a brilliant and sparkling pearl. A strong and righteous heart will always receive eternal blessings. Hit that subscribe button right now to bring some warmth and justice into your life.